My name is Sam Dressel, and this is my speaking outline for my first speech. It is an informative speech, and I will be speaking about a personal object that is inspirational. Have you ever felt the presence of someone dear to you through an object? Being able to remember someone and their passions through an object allows us to feel closer and more connected to them. By continuing to use that object, it's almost as if they're acting through us or we're carrying out their will. My 60-degree wedge is an inspirational object because of my grandfather's passion for golf. My grandfather was a golf ranger for over 30 years. Even while in old age and hardship, my grandfather would continue to go out almost every day to golf because he just loved it that much. His passion and dedication for golf is something that should inspire us all because he continued to do something he loved for decades. This is truly an inspiration of how to live your life and follow your passions. My 60-degree wedge is inspirational because I never got to golf with my grandfather. My grandfather passed away a few years ago, and at the time he passed, I had never even picked up a golf club. I wrote it off as just a boring sport. A few years later, I received his wedge as a birthday present. Now, as I have picked up golf, I hear stories about him all the time and regret not starting sooner. This is an inspiration to not take things for granted and to branch out on your interest. My 60-degree wedge is inspirational because it's the only club I've ever chipped in with. I'm a below average golfer at best, so chipping in for me is extremely rare. But when I have chipped in, it's only been with this club. When I use this wedge and chip in or hit a good shot, it feels as if my grandfather's playing through me, or it brings me closer to him. So let's dive deeper into how an object as simple as a golf club can be an inspirational. Thank you guys for joining me today so I can inform you of how my simple 60-degree wedge is an inspiration. My wedge was passed down to me by my grandfather. It's a Ben Hogan 60-degree that he possessed for decades. My grandfather was extremely passionate about golf, you might even say obsessed. He was a principal for many years, and when he retired, he enjoyed a new career being a golf ranger. As my grandfather got older, golfing became harder and harder for him. However, as it got harder, it almost seemed like he got more determined to go golfing no matter what. He just loved the game so much. I believe my grandfather's love and dedication for the game of golf should be an inspiration on everyone on how they should live their lives. We should all follow his example and do things we are passionate about and love. This here is my grandfather's 60-degree wedge, Ben Hogan. You can tell it's very worn. Should definitely get it regripped. But everyone's time's limited. We also need to consider not taking things for granted. My grandfather passed away a few years ago, and at the time of his passing, I had never even swung a golf club, much less gone to play around. It's one of my biggest regrets, as I assumed golf was just a boring sport and never attempted to learn or go with my grandfather. A few years later, when I eventually picked up golf, I was gifted my grandfather's 60-degree wedge for my birthday. This is probably my favorite present I've ever received. And now that I have inherited not only my grandfather's wedge, but his passion for golf, I can only wish I started sooner and got to play around with my grandfather. I hear stories about my grandfather golfing all the time from my family and love learning about how passionate he was about golf. This has become an inspiration to not take the things around me or us for granted and try new things with an open mind. If I had looked around and realized I should try golfing, I wouldn't have the regrets I did today. Speaking of starting golf sooner, I probably would have been a much better golfer. I'm a below average golfer. Only been playing about 2 or 3 years, which isn't long enough for me to be anything close to good. I try and practice as much as I can, and I've considered taking lessons, but while I can't do either of those things fully, I do what I can to improve because I love the game, and it feels like my grandfather's with me and will be proud of my effort while I'm golfing. Because I'm not that good of a golfer, I almost never chip in. But the only times I have ever chipped in was using this 60-degree wedge that was inherited from my grandfather. First time I ever chipped in, I couldn't stop thinking about how I was carrying out my grandfather's will by continuing to play the game of golf. This inspires me to continue playing this game because of our shared love for it. Hopefully, one day I can play as much as he did and get a chance to play more with my dad. As I wrap this up, I think it's important to not just ignore if this made you feel inspired, but instead follow it and use that inspiration. My 60-degree wedge is just a metal stick, but this metal stick is an inspiration because it possessed my grandfather's passion for golf. My grandfather passed away before I got to golf with him, and this is the only club I've ever used to chip in with. So it may just be a metal stick, but it carries a lot of emotion and inspiration behind it. I love using it as I continue to be inspired and follow the same passion my grandfather had.